Yeah, he's in a better place. If you look at Ipsos numbers or the average of all the polling firms out there, all the polling numbers, he's improved a point or two since, let's say, the beginning of the month. And I think that has a lot to do with him stepping off the gas a bit.
Interesting.
He was creating a lot of friction around the edges. He was confronting conventions and norms. People don't like that. They're worried, obviously, about potential inflation linked to tariffs. And all that has sort of tampered down a bit.
Interesting that this may have coincided with his pulling back on China for a bit, right? We'll give that a breather, maybe an agreement in principle, whatever we go home thinking, reciprocal tariffs under review. What happens, though, when that review ends and maybe some of this stuff kicks back in?
Well, it's going to be ultimately about whether there's negative impact in people's day-to-day lives. Right now, it's all noise.
Yeah.
It's news. It's not concrete,
Yeah.
right? And people are worried about that. Public opinion is worried about that. But we really won't see the impact, if there's going to be an impact, until it affects, if it does affect, people's ability to make ends meet.
Give me a reality check on this Moody's headline, because at Bloomberg, that's a big deal. 10 years back above 4.5%. You say, oh my God, the market's going to tank. It's not, clearly. And I wonder what people really think of this. Does a Moody's downgrade to AA1 mean anything to somebody who's trying to figure out how to pay the bills this month?
No, not at all. They don't know what it even is, right? Ultimately, these are things that elites and bankers and people in Wall Street and people that run companies are worried about, less so about someone in trying to make ends meet, putting food on the table. But ultimately, it runs in part counter to what we're seeing in public opinion. Like we said before,
Yes.
we're in a period of lull. There is trepidation, there is unease about the present, but there are glimmers of hope looking forward for people.
I'm fascinated by the push and pull when it comes to tariffs based on what you found. Americans do not see the near-term benefit of tariffs. Americans do, however, see the long-term benefits, but are split on whether the pain is worth it. How do we rationalize that?
Well, they're worried about things today,
Yeah.
right? Like I said before, there's a lot of trepidation and unease, and it doesn't matter the poll, the question, the indicator, we see it in a general sense. When we talk about the potential benefit of tariffs, generation of jobs, bring manufacturing back to the U.S.,
Yeah.
A majority of Americans say, yes, I can see where tariffs make sense. I'm in favor of that. But I'm not quite sure I want to suffer the pain needed to get there.
Doesn't that say more about our society, the way that we look at things? Like, hey, I know it's going to pay off, but I'm not sure I'm actually willing to pay it.
Yeah, I think most people need to think in the short term. They need to think about how to make ends meet. They need to worry about how much money is left over at the end of the month, and that's just an indicator of that.
Incredible. As we wait to hear from the president on this phone call with Vladimir Putin, you find that Republicans are still being seen stronger on immigration, on the economy, on inflation, and yes, foreign policy. Are people paying attention to wars on the other side of the world?
Not much. I mean, they're really worried about immigration on the one hand, the cost of living on the other, and Republicans are strong on those points. Trump is strong on those points, and they have been historically. Foreign policy, less so. They get good marks, that is, Republicans do, but people are much less worried about what's going on in the Ukraine or in the Middle East, and much more worried about how to make ends meet.
Right, absolutely. And I guess we're going to be hearing more about this now. When it comes to messaging, there's been a big question about the way this White House is flooding the zone, as they say. I think you're suggesting that maybe things are improving because the zone isn't quite so flooded, the cadence that we've seen. But the messaging around inflation specifically, talking about kids not being able to have as many toys, was one that kind of hung around the president's neck here. Scott Bessent over the weekend suggesting that maybe Walmart needs to eat some of this, as the president said in a Truth Social post. It's been impacting the soft data, as we say. Consumer sentiment, consumer expectations. We have yet to see it really creep into the hard data. But you're a pollster. You're an expert on this. Do you have a sense of at what point people lose patience? The honeymoon period ends.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise once again. And like I said before, there's a pessimism about the present. We have seen some sort of behavioral change among households. They've cut some sort of non-essential expenditures like travel, and they are stockpiling on some essentials. We've seen that. But this is all, once again, theoretical.
Yeah, right.
This is about the future that hasn't gotten here yet, hasn't arrived. And it really will be about whether it affects Americans' ability to make ends meet, and we're not there yet.
Well, now to the comedy part of the program with Cliff Young. Americans want the president to work with Congress rather than issue executive orders. I'm not sure if they've been paying attention, but that's not going to be the plan coming out of this White House, is it?
Yeah, I don't think we should take it literally. We should take it sort of conceptually.
Okay.
In other words, Americans want less friction. They want their leaders to follow the rules. They don't like it when they're thwarted. There's been
a lot of that.
A lot of that. And that's why, why he dropped in the numbers. That's why he outstripped the historical average for the first 100 days. He was at 6-point decline versus a 3-point decline.
These were the Doge executive actions or any
all
of
them all
others?
together, right? And that's what, and today what we're seeing a bit, as you've already said, Joe, is him stepping off the pedal a bit. I think the numbers are improving a bit because there's less of that friction of that contest going on in public opinion's mind.
Does it help to see the president being presidential, as they say, on a trip like he just took to the Middle East? Not a heck of a lot of news other than some investments in technology, some of the other things that he was talking about, but it was mainly a big photo op. They put a music video together at the White House to post this, being seen with leaders, not just political leaders, but business leaders out there doing things in a forum that nobody else could do. Is there actually a benefit in 2025 to those kind of optics?
Yeah, on the margins, it's important to see our leaders
People get pretty jaded.
our presidents act presidential.
Yeah.
And I think these sorts of initiatives, activities, actions go to seeing public opinion tampered down a bit. It won't have a huge impact, but it does have an impact.
At some point, this is going to start feeding into midterms. I don't know when you start paying attention to that, but we've already got people talking about it here on the air. We had the chair of the DCCC on just a couple of weeks ago talking about strategy, talking about special elections where we're trying to read tea leaves. Has this begun already, or is it too early?
Well, the season's begun, but it's probably starting too early.
Yeah.
I don't like to look at things.
Is the polling season?
No, we're far off still.
Yeah.
Really November, December is when we begin to look. Listen, typically the party out of power does better in the midterms. Normally, the party out of power, the Democrats, in this case, gain seats in the House, typically take back the House.
Sure.
That's probably going to be the trend, at least. The Democrats probably will trend better. But let's see where we are, especially with this administration going into next year.